Hi, I'm Dr. Saji Philip, fetal and pediatric cardiologist, Division of Pediatric Cardiology, Tiruvalla Medical Mission, Kerala. I'm giving today a very interesting topic on a study on fetal intracardiac echogenic foci. Most often, they are our ultrasonologists sending cases to fetal echo specifically to rule out congenital heart disease in association with the echogenic foci. Because the study says that zero point 0.4 to 16% can be associated with unemployed. So this is a very interesting topic, especially we are pondering the possible etiology on echogenicity. And the study group has four people, and my colleague Shalom, Dr. Shalom is the assistant professor in anatomy, All India Institute of Medical Science, Rajkot. And Dr. Pradeep Vaideshwar, one of the well-known pioneer cardiovascular pathologist, SIDH, GS Medical College, Bombay. And Dr. UP Singh, he is very much interested in fetal and fetal autopsies. He is a prime heart institute based at Chandigarh, India. So, what is intracardiac echoing foci? When you define this is as any bright, linear or a spherical echogenic foci or a spores or round shadow within the ventricles detected by fetal cardiac ultrasound. This is usually by 16th week of gestation onwards. And before the 16 or 15 weeks, I have not received any cases with the identification of any foci. So maybe sonographically it will be detected after 16 weeks of gestation. Some of having any other opinion, you can mail to me. Most often we see in left ventricle. That is a wonderful thing. This is first described by Schwester and colleagues in 1987, and intracardiac echoing foci is still one of the early soft ultrasonographic markers, along with the choroid plexus, abdominal multiple echogenicities, and pilectasis, extensively studied for chromosomal anomalies. If whenever more than two ultrasonography markers coming in the picture of the ultrasound diagnosis, then we should think about the possibility of aneuploidy and association of the congenital heart disease. That is the reason most often they are sending to the fetal cardiologist for echocardiogram. So the literature showed very few publications on investigating the etiology part, especially the postnatal follow-up. Nomura has performed this study. We want to know what is happening, what is the natural course of the echogenic foci. Or postnatal echo only we can relieve where it is clearly located. So we want to know the real location also. And it's histopathology. So example, this is a right ventricular intracardiac echogenic foci, very clearly a spherical echogenic shadow in the anterior papillary muscle of the tricuspid valve. Here, the descending AO, we are showing that the stomach is this side, so the descending AO is always at the left atrium, and so the lower chamber will be the left ventricle. And this bright focus, so-called golf balls. This is another example of multiple, we can observe four in number. Very interesting. Two are in the anterior papillary muscle of the tricuspid valve. Interestingly, in the right ventricle, we found that all the echogenic foci we detected, only three cases only we detected. And all the three cases, it was in anterior papillary muscle. We never seen in the posterior papillary muscle or the septal papillary muscle of the right ventricular echogenic foci. So whereas in the left ventricle, it can happen both here, both in anterior papillary muscle and posterior papillary muscle. Multiple LV echogenic foci always seen at the anterior papillary muscle and posterior papillary muscle, whereas more than three or more echogenic foci, always we see multiple echogenic foci within the anterior papillary muscle, not in the posterior papillary muscle. Posterior papillary muscle we saw only one, single. So that also interesting finding. You should understand that in the LV itself, if you are locating multiple echogenic foci, most often more than one will be seen only in anterior papillary muscle, whereas in posterior papillary muscle we see only one. So the multiple can occur only in the medial papillary muscle, not in the posterolateral papillary muscle. So the determine the frequency, location, delineation of the echogenicity of the intracardiac echogenic foci was our aim. Autopsy and histopathology we done in one case. Very rarely, no one will terminate the fetus for echogenic foci. So very rarely get the specimen for autopsy for echogenic foci. Here, the case was bilateral tortuous, huge hydroureter and multiple the hydronephrosis, large hydronephrosis. So they themselves terminate as per the advices, counseling from fetal medicine doctors or the pediatric surgeons. So they were not happy to continue the pregnancy. So they terminated, and I got the specimen from some other hospital, and I could able to do the autopsy. So therefore, we performed a 10-year retrospective study on incidence of intracardiac echogenic foci. Now we studied around 3,350 cases, but but the ratio now also same. So I didn't increase the number in this study because the percentage is same, similar. So out of 2,445 cases referred for fetal cardiac ultrasound scan, that the age between 19 and 54 years, some are infertility treatment they came, that's why 54 years also ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm insemination cases also can sometimes may come at 54 years. That is in the case donor sperm and donor ovum. So the 7-year follow-up study also we did to know the natural course, what is happening to this echogenic foci and its anatomical location. So the histopathology and autopsy given a very interesting clue for this the etiology behind these golf balls. Echogenic foci can be single or multiple, and they can further classify the RVEF, left ventricular echogenic foci, and bilateral echogenic foci. And multiple echogenic foci can be in right ventricle or left ventricle. Right ventricle, remember that it can happen only to the anterior papillary muscle of the tracheus wall. No other septal or posterior papillary muscle is spared. Whereas both anterior and posterior papillary muscle can occur in the left ventricle. In the left ventricle itself, if it is a multiple, can see only the anterior papillary muscle, that is more than 2 or 3. Posterior papillary muscle, we always see only single. We never saw multiple, like anterior papillary muscle, sometimes 2 we see. And then how it is resolving, we define that whenever the brightness of echogenic foci become insignificant echogenicity, as tiny or linear or less brightness, less than 1.4 mm. Whenever you measure the width of the echogenic foci during your postnatal life or intrauterine echogenic foci, width, if it is coming less than 1.4 mm, is compared to the previous fetal or postnatal echo scan, you can define as it's a resolving echogenic foci. So the reports of the antenatal marker test and nuchal thickening via nasal bone reports were examined and verified, and no screening showed that any high risk of the aneuploidies or trisomy 21, 18 13. So in initial screening, we did it and we understood that there is no association. So we didn't send any specifically for amniocentesis or a fish study or other studies. So autopsy we did and the embryological development of the coronary artery to the papillary muscle also. We are actively discussed to understand the possible etiology further with the published data. So the table 1 clearly showed that out of 2,445 cases, we isolated 323 cases for intracardiac echoinfolk. Out of that, bilateral was 10. That means 13% of cases referred to us for the congenital heart cardiac evaluation or fetal cardiac evaluation, fetal cardiac ultrasound evaluation. We found that 13 cases were associated with the intracardiac echoinfolk. RV echoinfolk was very less, 1% only, whereas 3% we seen in bilateral, 96% cases we saw in LV echoinfolk. That's why we said that echoinfolk mainly we observed in the left ventricle. Out of that single, we saw 87%, multiple is only 11%, and resolving echoinfolk in 1% we saw. So the detailed description of the intracardiac foci studied postnatal life, we found that by 1 year of age, 92% can be resolved. By 5 years of age, further 4%, another 3% by 7 years. Associated disease, we had only 2 congenital heart disease. One VSD and tautology of valve, we did both the NIPT test or free cellular DNA test. Trisomy 13 and 18 was none. And I said 13% of cases referred for intracardiac echoinfolk were echogenic foci. Bilateral only 3%, RVEF was 1%, 96% was EF. So the example single LV echoinfolk, bilateral echoinfolk, right ventricular echoinfolk. I'm just proving that this is the right ventricle because the stomach and the descending aorta at the left of the spine, and whenever the stomach and descending aorta are seen, the side chambers will be left ventricle and left atrium. So the opposite side will be right ventricle, and that is the right ventricular echoinfolk. Here, very thick, we say that a calcified spot sometimes. And here you see as a single linear type, thick, more than 8 mm. And but when you further modify the view, you can delineate 2 echoinfolk. It's a multiple echoinfolk. The postnatal echoinfolk we did in 126 cases. And antenatally diagnosed ICF were enrolled for postnatal follow-up. Till complete resolution observed by 2D echocardiogram, which we took up to 7 years of age. 60 cases were dropped out of 1 year of age because 93 cases were resolved by 1 year of age. And out of 126, only 66 were followed up for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 7 years of age. And this was screened at 3 months, then 66 were followed up at 1 year of age, 3 year, 5 year of age. Data was analyzed for the confidence interval, and the statistical evaluation was significant. And here, look at the resolving echoinfolk. The right-sided echoinfolk is resolving faster than left when we see bilateral echoinfolk. This is short axis view showing both papillary muscle, both are having the echoinfolk, proving that near the wall, near the valve, mitral valve, that means the upper third of the papillary muscle, that is most often the apex. Whenever we diameter, if it is less than 1.4 mm, considers resolved. This is uterine fetal echogenic foci and postnatal echo immediate after within 1 month neonatal. Then at 7 months and then 1 year, it's resolved like a linear, and then it's less than 1.4 among considers resolved. This is the histopathology we did, and we found that there is an undulating bundles of fibromyxoid area near the valves attached to the mitral valve, and some amount of the endocardial cushion cells also seen. So the composite of drawing depicts the development of events leading to mature coronary artery and development of the papillary muscle and the chordae tendineae. This we are showing. The red one is coronary plexus, and this is covered in pericytes blue, which give stimulating multiplication, and the coronary artery cells, endothelial cells are forming. The pericytes role is important over the surface of the heart into the myocardium. And the B and C showed that the plexus vessel are slowly attached to the aorta to initiate the blood flow, triggering arterial remodeling that ultimately leads to mature arteries. This usually happens 6 to 7 weeks of gestation. This is a schematic development of the papillary muscle and the chordae tendineae. This is developing from the endocardial cushion. So you know that this coronary artery has to supply through the aorta to the myocardium and to the papillary muscle and to the all the parts of the heart. And this it will take little time to develop. So when it is getting mature, coronary artery plexus and final capillaries to the tip of the apex of the papillary muscle may take little time. So such occasion, what is happening, the metabolism to the particular cells or blood circulation to that cells, temporarily it has stopped, and it can get thickening or fibrosis or myxomatous tissues. If it is persists longer time, or circulation is totally embedded, then it can get a microcalcification. That histopathology study, very few studies in the world it is published, and it says that some are with microcalcification. So the plexus of blind epicardial capillaries appears on the heart of fifth to sixth week of life. Epicardia is a vital source of angiogenic growth factors that stimulate coronary plexus development. Cell tracing analysis suggests that coronary endothelium arises from three different progenitor populations: sinus venosus endocardium, ventricular endocardium, and the proepicardium. I know this the development of the our embryology of the coronary development may be a little bit bore for you, but monotonous for you. But it is important to know what is happening. Coronary cells present more than 60% of the non-myocytic population in the heart and are critical in providing blood flow as well as regulating the myocardial metabolism. So hence a proper coronary vasculature development is essential for late embryonic cardiac tissue homeostasis and efficiently support the oxygenation of the myocardial tissue. That's the one I want to conclude, that if the myocardial tissue not getting enough oxygenation, that is the tip of the apex, we found that this is happening only to the upper third of the apex of the papillary muscle, not any other place this echogenic intracardiac echogenic foci not seen. Sometimes we are seeing thickening around the annulus. We are seeing aorta or mitral valve. That is different. But this intracardiac echogenic foci we found only in the apex or one third of the papillary muscle. There, the oxygenation to the myocardial tissue efficiently not supplying a homeostasis is poor, and late development, such occasion, it can have developed. So we strongly consider that the myxomatous changes or fibrocalcification develops due to insufficient early development of epicardial coronary plexus. Not in all cases, but 93% cases is resolving, and 13% can get this kind of a insufficiency. So the poor remodeling of the coronary artery is detected as intracardiac echoing foci of the apical segment of the papillary muscle. This process may further intensify by the failure of the angiogenic progenitors or any changes to the master regulators or extracellular matrix protein. So in conclusion, frequency of single LV echoing foci was much higher in the left ventricle. It was well located within the upper third of the anterior papillary muscle. If it is in the right ventricle, only is you see in anterior papillary muscle of the tricuspid valve, not in the posterior papillary muscle or not in the septal papillary muscle in the right ventricle. If you see in the left ventricle, it can occur in both anterior and posterior papillary muscle. If it is multiple, we seen only at the anterior papillary muscle, only single only we used to see. In this study, only single only we see in the posterior papillary muscle of the left ventricle. So the variability in the echogenicity ICF could be dependent on transformation of the myxomatous tissue to fibrosis or microcalcification, possibly due to insufficient early development of epicardial coronary plexus to the remodeling stage of the coronary artery to the papillary muscle. As the age advances, we say that intracardiac echoing foci will resolve completely. 96% can resolve by 1 year of age, and no specific chromosomal association observed. It is no hemodynamic function on this echoing foci, nothing related, no need of follow-up. But we did this study, normal anatomical variant also we have to study, that is important thing. And moreover that, this will be a simulation for the further research for the younger generation, new early career members, those who are doing the research in the area of the echoing foci or the fetal study. And so finally we conclude that intracardiac echoing foci considered as benign in nature, no association with any aneuploidy unless otherwise. More than two sonographic markers like choroid plexus or pyelectasis or multiple echogenic bowel shadow, then there is a sense that there will be an association. Sometimes bilateral echoing foci also can be associated with aneuploidy, but alone not. That's what in our study we found. Thank you. Thank you. I hope this presentation definitely will be benefited for the interesting of the knowledge on intracardiac echoing foci. Thank you. Thank you.